Welcome to The Craft. I'm your host, May Globus. This podcast is a collection of intimate conversations on artistry, mastery, and life with talented, passionately curious creatives and entrepreneurs. Most are dear friends, some are those I've admired from afar. I hope you enjoy these conversations, this exploration of the humanity that connects all of us, as much as I do having them. Thank you for being here and for listening. Beth Richards is one powerful female force. The designer has a long list of accomplishments, cutting her teeth at brands like Roots, Aritzia, John Fluevog, and Kitten Ace before launching her namesake swimwear label in 2011. She grew up just outside of Toronto, inspired by skate, street, music, and rave culture throughout her teenage years. Honest and always unapologetically herself, Beth has carved a path all her own in the fashion world. In this conversation, we explore what it's like to be a female voice in a very male world, her ethical, sustainable, and fair wage approach to design, what she'd tell her teenage self, and more. Please enjoy this candid conversation with the very self-assured Beth Richards. Beth Richards, welcome to The Craft.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited to see your face. As we were saying just in our little pre-chat, it's been a minute. It's been since October. I think the end of October. Yeah, nice to see your smile. I always like to think back to when I met my guest, and I couldn't really pinpoint the one moment where we met. We have a lot of mutual friends, Christina Culver, who's been a guest on the podcast, Melania, who's coming up. But I do remember that you had a beautiful Beth Richards pop-up shop at the Fairmont Pacific. And you were in the shop that day. And I think that was the first time we ever had our first sort of longer conversation other than a hi at, some sort of event. So that's what I'm pinpointing.
Yeah. Again, we do have a ridiculous amount of mutual friends. So I do remember when we met, it was like, how have we not met? That's almost crazy.
Yeah.
But the Fairmont was a really fun event to do. And that was amazing to sort of pull together in the middle of a hotel with this cool pop-up. And I think Justin Bieber actually ended up coming by, and my associate didn't know that it was Justin Bieber. How hilarious is that?
That is funny.
The one girl in the world who doesn't know, which actually kind of makes it cooler in the end, that she was like, I don't know, this weird young guy came in with like bad acne and tattoos and bought towels. But she was like, he was wearing a ridiculous amount of bling. And I was like, dude, I'm pretty sure that was Justin Bieber. Anyway, weird name droppy, like, to start. There we go.
And why not? Why not? So tell me a little bit about growing up. You grew up in Toronto?
I did. Yeah, I grew up east of Toronto in Pickering.
What were your parents like?
Oh, my parents are awesome. This is a big part of the reason why I moved back home, actually. My dad worked in sporting goods, so he's definitely sort of like the marketing and sales guy. My mom was a nurse, but she was much more than a nurse. She actually worked in research in the end of her sort of career, her medical career. So, she's been published in the New England, I can't remember, the medical journal.
Yeah. Are you very close to them?
I am, yeah.
And what were you like? What were you like as a child and teenager?
I mean, super rebellious teenager. We can get to that. But I was a really bubbly child. My parents would tell you, I was very curious and happy and, just, I had a very good childhood. No complaints there at all. But the teenage years got a little bit more colorful and interesting. I didn't have the easiest high school life, that's for sure. Experienced some bullying, just never really felt like I fit in until, until I started raving actually, and sort of found my, who I sort of felt were my group through music and fashion. And just sort of it all kind of starts from there. I feel like my foray into the fashion world for sure.
And what did that look like the foray into the fashion world? Were you working in retail, or were you starting to, I mean, did you design things in your room?
Yeah, all of the above. So yeah, I did some retail work. I was really lucky in high school to have a fashion design program. So I did that in grade 9 actually. I had given up a scholarship to go and dance sort of semi-professionally away from school. I just realized around then that it wasn't my passion. And so I wanted to sort of have this regular high school life. And I needed an elective class, and I was sitting in the guidance counselor's office, and I was flipping through the pages of this book, and they asked me, pick one of these, elective courses, and go from there. And I saw this grade 10 clothing, and from there, I just had this aha moment the first day I walked into that class. It was just everything I had felt like I'd been missing. And from there, yeah, I started working with a lot of commercial patterns. I was lucky enough to get a sewing machine for Christmas and would sew in my bedroom a lot, first, like sort of reworking vintage things. And, then as I started partying, making outfits to go to raves and things, and, experimenting with my style, and, the rest of
Hmm. Yeah, I know that you're really influenced by the skateboard culture and a bunch of things. Like even today in your designs.
Yeah, I mean, we were always sort of the anti, right? Like I was not popular by any stretch. And so it was, the goths, all the kids smoking cigarettes, skaters, just kids doing drugs and hanging out, that were, like away from the jocks and the popular girls.
Mhm.
So from there, it's just like our sort of anti everyone. It was just really sort of a coming together, and you know also a lot of amazing music happening at that time, and not really feeling understood by our parents. I grew up in the 90s, and Kurt Cobain, and like just all of this amazing music, Lollapalooza. It was very much a melting pot, right? There weren't all of these, there were sort of the groups, but everyone wasn't really defined so much by what they sort of listened to. And so all of those things were big influences in my life. Riot Grrrl, obviously, Kim Gordon,
Mhm.
Kathleen Hanna, and what those women sort of really started to come into the forefront and have their own voices. And through that X Girl, and just being then obsessed with like Chloe Sevigny, and being introduced to Sofia Coppola, and just all of these sort of like cool New York girls, and this, um, all these like amazing sort of things coming together, and just being like and watching fashion television, and just being really influenced and obsessed by it.
Mhm. Like a lot of stuff that's against the grain, slightly rebellious.
It felt like that at the time, for sure. You look back now and it maybe doesn't seem as groundbreaking, but certainly, you know, when you think back to Marc Jacobs' debut collection for Perry Ellis, it really was, that no one had seen anything like this before. And then the explosion of hip hop culture. So, I was hugely, as a junglist, I was hugely into hip hop culture, Polo, Low Life, all of, Helly Hansen, all of these, sort of oversized fits that you're seeing in, Wu-Tang music videos, and sort of emulating. And, because all this music sort of being sampled, and, just again, bringing all of these sort of cultures and mashing them into one. It was still really new at the time. It was a sort of birth of that style of rap. And I feel really fortunate to have been able to have experienced it.
Yeah, for sure. The one thing I love and admire about you is that you're a very frank and honest person. I feel like you tell it like it is. You're unapologetic about it. I feel like it's a rare quality in a world where people don't always like to be a lightning rod. I'm curious where this trait comes from.
It's almost to a fault, obviously. So these things have gotten me into trouble as much as you appreciate them. You know what? I don't know. I just have always spoken my mind. Uh, I'm a Scorpio. It's this weird thing that like Scorpios tend to actually want to be liked, but then I have this sort of polarizing personality. And I know that about myself. It's part of the reason why I work for myself. But I kind of wouldn't have it any other way. So yeah, I guess I just don't really know what it's like to be edited. It's difficult, that's for sure.
Yeah, I read somewhere that you always return to the book Catcher in the Rye because you love the protagonist Holden Caulfield's honest cynicism.
I really do. It's just like, and again, going back to just how groundbreaking that book was, for someone to back then just sort of, say like, fuck school, like, you know, fuck this, like just all of the, these structures in place that, I'm supposed to adhere to. And even the writing and the language of the book, just for the 70s, or actually, you know what, that's terrible. I think it actually came out in the 50s, right? I don't know.
Mhm.
I'll look back.
Yeah.
And just think about that time and how shocking that must have been. But
Mhm.
yeah, I do love that book.
So you have a pretty astounding list of brands that you've worked at and or designed for. Roots as an accessories buyer, Aritzia as design manager for accessories, Sugoi, Gentle Fawn, John Fluevog, Kitten Ace. Really amazing. How did these big brand experiences shape you?
I certainly learned a lot through a lot of those experiences. Um, you know, One of the biggest takeaways I feel like was I learned what I didn't want. And it was really, um, to sort of work in that type of structure. It's not that I, can't get along with others. I certainly feel like I do love collaboration, but it was just really difficult to make maybe the change or have as much of an impact as I wanted working in sort of a big corporate structure like that.
Mhm.
Um, a lot of when it comes to design is very uh, incestuous or laggard, if you will, whereas I was really looking to innovate where I could. That
Mhm.
was more of a challenge than you'd think.
Right. Yeah. Did you ever feel like in these, in perhaps just calling it a corporate structure that female voices weren't as heard?
Oh, 100%, absolutely.
Mm.
And, I've been labeled a bitch most of my life. Um, and it absolutely has to do with like, the fact that I so freely will speak my mind and stand up for myself. And generally speaking, men in power in the room, that makes them feel incredibly uncomfortable.
Mm. And how did you try to navigate it for all those years?
I mean, the best I could, which was, not as great as I would have hoped. Certainly, felt marginalized in a lot of the positions I'd had. A lot of microaggressions thrown my way for sure. I've been insulted, called all kinds of names, demoted, or just taken off projects. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to sort of see what's happening. It was so famously called out for being insecure by one of those, bosses. And,
Mhm.
only for me to, it's like people have called me a lot of things over the course of my life. And I can assure you, being, insecure is not sort of one of them. We all have insecurities. We all have things that we don't feel comfortable with. But me and my work is actually one of the areas that I've always felt pretty secure and comfortable in speaking my voice. So,
Mhm.
in all honesty, I do thank that whole cast of characters because I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you if things had gone the other way. So I'm very thankful that I was met with so much adversity because it pushed me to go out onto my own and realize that there is a different way of working. You can, make your own rules, make your own money, be independent. And,
Mm.
my independence is the thing I value most in life.
Mm. And we were talking about how frank and honest you are, which is definitely more an East Coast trait. But in 2008, you moved to Vancouver. What prompted the move out here?
At the time, yeah, I got a job out there. My partner had got a job as well. So both moved in hopes, to be honest, to just check it out and try something new. I moved out to a large West Coast company. I'm sure most people are familiar with, and I took on, quite a big job at the time. I was very excited. Um, I just had this weird gravitational pull that when this opportunity came up, and I really, I would always say that, my instincts in the universe would have always guided me.
Mm.
Um, but I just had this feeling that I had to go. Something was there for me. I just wasn't totally clear on what that was.
Mm.
I'll come to learn that it was my future partner and an amazing brand that would be conceived by that move, because I would have never ever even dreamt of making swimwear in Toronto, just because beach culture is just not
It's not a
as
thing. Right.
as prominent for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's right. Because you did move to Vancouver with someone, but didn't end up being who it is now, Tito.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, in 2011, you launched Beth Richards because you noticed that there was a gap in the market for quality, fashionable swimwear. Tell me about the moment you knew you had to do this.
It came a little bit earlier than that. There was the moment when, I was just really desperately looking for swimsuits to wear to Third Beach. Here I am. I was a fashion person in Vancouver and was like, oh, okay, so like this is a legitimate piece of my wardrobe. So now what? It was a time of American Apparel. So, okay, cool, cool. I'm like an extra large in American Apparel because everything is like made for teenagers, or like my breasts will fall out or whatnot. Okay, so limited options there. H&M, made by children. Okay, cool, $12, got it. Renfrew at the time was only carrying like Burberry checkered, like the Burberry plaid print one pieces, and like a handful of maybe some Stella, pieces, but really that was it. And Value Village. So I would, end up basically buying most of my suits sort of vintage at the time because there really wasn't a ton of options. Now, that said, I do feel like maybe I didn't know as much as obviously I know now, and that naivete I think was like really good for me to, have gone, into swim in the first place. But yeah, I just felt that, okay, clearly I can't be the only woman, at the time in my, 30s looking for just like a really nice black swimsuit to wear that's just like not going to break down and like a good quality. So I was like, you know what? And at the time, I was really looking for a pivot out of my current job. You had mentioned sort of accessories. That wasn't, by design. I went to fashion school like the rest of everyone else. I started making soft goods and then it just sort of snowballed and everyone thought, oh, you're the accessory person. It's like, I really desperately wanted to get back into fashion and felt like I'd been really typecasted into this specific role. Um, so this was also an opportunity to show that like I could, make something other than like a bag and a belt and a sock, and like a knit hat. So, all of those things came together and I thought, let me just sort of prototype some of this and, see sort of where it goes. It was definitely a hobby. I wasn't really thinking of it as this, big thing at first anyway. And I had sort of a safety net of another job at the time, which, there's value in like don't quit your day job for sure.
Hmm.
And just as I actually, it took probably over a year to really develop everything through. At first I started sourcing factories in Italy. I really wanted to have this high end feel. We ended up doing obviously the fabric from Italy, but Europe takes quite a long time to develop things. And then I really started to focus around making things in Canada and seeing the value there, and just also working hands on with the factory. Um, and so it started wanting this basic swimsuit for women, and then it became just this almost call to action, this thing that I needed to do as a feminist, as a woman, wanting to find something for us outside of the male gaze that
Mm.
women, at the time, a lot of my friends were starting to start families, you know, everyone sort of had their own story as to what they needed and why, women were just looking for something to feel comfortable in, to chase babies, or possibly just had a C-section and, not wanting to expose, scars, or just wanting to feel good about themselves in something that, loved them as much, considering sort of the options at the time. So thinking of all those things, together, just it made sense that I sort of, yeah, saw this project through.
Hmm. And local manufacturing is really important to you, making sure everything's made in Canada.
It is. I mean, so the ethics around the brand is, it's not a non-exploitive brand, full stop. And to be non-exploitive, it means you cannot be making, product on the backs of someone else. We know why Jeff Bezos is a gazillionaire, right? Because he profits off of others, as do most factories in Asia. I still, have my issues with people that tout sustainability while making things, you know, for penny cents on the dollar. Yeah, you can use all the recycled, yarns you want, but that's not going to take away from the human rights issues that there are in low skilled, or sorry, low paying skilled, work. And so I really felt, there's that aspect, especially the fact that a lot of women are the ones that are most exploited in developing nations when it comes to manufacturing. Look what's happening in India right now. It's like absolutely abhorrent. Um, I urge people to watch A True Cost if you haven't, so you can really see a lot of the times, it's greed that is really, the biggest problem. There's enough food and there's enough of shelter on the planet for everyone. It's just not distributed properly. And people need to pay back. It's just everyone, big companies are putting profits over people. They want those margins at the sake, or safety of somebody else. And I'm unwilling to do that. And it comes with its own costs. Certainly, I have not been able to do probably a lot of the things I've wanted to do with the brand because I just don't have that extra room. But making things in Canada was important. I wanted to keep the manufacturing at home, not only so that I had a little bit more control in oversight, but to reduce our common carbon footprint to almost nil, if not nil. Um, and to also really put Canada on the world stage when it comes to manufacturing. People don't really see us as being anything outside of lifestyle. So I thought this was a real opportunity to show the world that we can be fashion players too. I know swim still gets, sort of a bad rap, and people don't think of it as seriously as they maybe do ready to wear. But I wanted to bring, sort of a level of seriousness to the commodity.
Hmm.
And, I really felt strongly about made in Canada and still do.
Yeah. Do you think the industry is making enough changes in and around this, or if there is a shift in the mindset of, um, yeah, like the sustainability aspect of things, making sure that we're kinder to the planet and how we make clothing?
Yeah, certainly people care more about the planet. I just don't think they care enough about people.
Mm,
Um, and it's just because it's a little bit of that NIMBY. It's because things, people aren't directly affected, or maybe they don't see it. Um, I think there's a bit of a disconnect, but you know, people want, and I understand it's difficult, right? Because it's expensive. Um, and there really should be an honest cost to what people are buying. I think if they knew, or if they were maybe aware, I think a lot of people would pay a little bit extra to know that, things were made properly. Like, there needs to maybe be some regulation, maybe like how you buy organic meats versus,
hmm
um, perhaps that's something that, is coming. But I do feel that, I hope anyway, that things are changing, and that we are starting to look at our fellow man, and human, and see that, the West is not just, sort of better than the East, but, there needs to be some sort of wealth sharing there.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying on like putting yourself in the shoes of others. I mean, this whole last year was, with what has been going on with the pandemic has kind of leveled the playing field in that way where everyone's sort of experiencing this really hard thing all together. And
But
I
it
know that go ahead.
hasn't. Sorry, yeah, it has and it hasn't, because
Mm,
it's just actually made the wealth gap that much worse. And
mm,
especially for women, women had been, forced to go back home and do all the caregiving, do all the unpaid work, and will now have to go back to a battered workforce, probably making less than they were before. So I think a lot of us thought, oh, the pandemic is sort of like the great equalizer. Well, actually, no, the top 1% ended up, stealing their way to, even more wealth than the rest of us. And frankly, I mean, I know I'm sick of it. I hope that the movement continues to hold these big companies accountable, because yeah, it's it's robbery.
mhm, mhm. Well, I did read that Biden was increasing corporate taxes for big corporations in the states, or he's proposing that. So,
I mean, fuck, I pay taxes. I love to pay no taxes. Of course. Wouldn't we all love to pay? But this is the thing, I actually wouldn't. Just, let me clarify. I would like to pay taxes, because that's the right thing to do. You pay taxes, you help your fellow man. That's what you do in a community. And to me, again, it's just like, this is the patriarchy at work. We understand why all of this is what it is. White men have been making the rules, white men have been setting the rules. And you know it's exactly, this is all by design. And the reason why it's all set up is because, again, they're the ones that benefit the most. So now, after hundreds of years, they're like, oh, they don't want to give away their grip. That's why you're seeing this craziness go on. But yeah, everyone needs to pay their part. Nobody needs trillions of dollars. No one needs that. You don't need that. And so, to me, it's shocking that people look at wealthy, billionaires, people that have been just born into money. Nepotism is everywhere, and think that these people are, you know, amazing. I don't get it.
hmm. I want to take it back to you and the last 14 months of your business and having to make the shifts. What did you learn and what did you learn about yourself?
Um, probably that I was more resilient than I thought. It was really difficult. It's still difficult 2021 will probably be the hardest on the books that I've experienced so far, because at least 2020 still had, those orders from the pre-pandemic. As someone who does the majority of wholesale, yeah, I watched 80% of my business evaporate overnight. That that was a lot of business, and a lot to stomach. Again, it's swim, it's connected to travel and leisure, all of these things that were directly affected by the pandemic. Um, I made the decision to not make sweatsuits, to not make more stuff. I didn't want to just add things to the earth that didn't mean something. And I've always felt that way when it comes to sort of, when brands copy, it's just always floors me. If you're going to take the time to create something, just why don't you just create something new and interesting rather than sort of regurgitating? Um, so I felt that way with the brand too. If I pivot, it needs to feel right. It needs to be meaningful to the brand. So, I sort of made a decision that I wasn't just going to start making new categories for the sake of making it. Not only, were resources limited, because they were certainly during that time, looking into sourcing something new is also huge, expense. At first, I was reluctant to make masks because I wasn't sure if that was something, we should be doing. At the time, I felt like everyone was making them, but certainly, wanted everyone to stay employed as much as possible. So we, made some custom masks for a few companies. So that worked really well. We made some for, a women's, an amazing nonprofit actually in Vancouver. And so that was really great to just sort of keep things going and to stay afloat. But yeah, we did this collaboration with Roopa that was born in the last 14 months, but it was really challenging. I have to say, like, just personally, just, feeling really dark and hopeless, and just where things were going to, emerge from, especially for me having been in business for as long as I had been, just about to pass this 10-year milestone.
Congratulations, by the way. That's
Thank
huge.
you. Yeah, I mean, it felt like it was a lot of work to get here, and to feel as though that could be sort of, just sort of snuffed out overnight was devastating. And again, I know these are, first world problems for sure, but that doesn't take away the fact that I put everything into this brand and into my work. So yeah, it was a challenge, but somehow got through it, and still getting through it. Daily. It's not easy. I have a lot of support, from friends and family, and certainly I feel they're the ones that help me get through it.
And what do you do for yourself to make sure that you're, taking care of yourself during this time? Yeah.
I sleep. I try and get always like a good night's sleep. I have a really cute dog that I love to walk. She's not
She
here
is
right
very cute.
now. We got a Peloton during the pandemic, so that has helped, sort of
hmm
been through it.
Is it on
Um,
your patio?
no, it's in the hallway,
Oh,
which I know it's funny. It's in the hallway, but the lights can, makes it kind of feel like you're in a studio that way.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Your place is beautiful. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, you know what? We still saw friends. We made sure to sort of keep things as normal as possible. We just got really into food and cooking and,
hmm
just, yeah, I can't even tell you, like, what do I do to take care of myself? Because we've been in this continual lockdown, I'm just like, I have to even think about that. Like, what do we even do?
yeah, it's definitely a little heavier for you guys out there on the East Coast.
Yeah. we had like a great summer, it feels like, and then it's just sort of been lockdown. So it's been like a lot of at home time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I try and connect with friends and family for sure. I am not above, obviously, a therapy appointment here or there, try and read as much as I can. But throughout the pandemic, for sure, I was having difficulty, reading a book. Even I just couldn't concentrate like that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know if I
Yeah.
answered your question.
No, no, you answered it for sure. I wanted to say congratulations on your latest collaboration as well with Indian designer Roopa Pemmaraju. I hope I said that right. I hope I did that justice.
You
And you
did.
have some very similar alignment in how you look at your approach to ethics and manufacturing and making sure that people are paid a fair wage. And then I also read that the textiles are digitally printed to eliminate the use of dyes. Like the colors are gorgeous.
We almost skipped a season with wholesale. Everything shut down. Basically, no one really wanted any new product, but certainly a handful of retailers could not deny just sort of how beautiful and just how special this collab was. So, yeah, it was really amazing coming together. And, one of my retailers, Free People, actually sold out one of the suits in a week. So,
Amazing.
yeah, working on a reorder for them right now, which is amazing. But
Where can
just to
people find it if they wanted to? Like,
so
obviously, online at bethrichards.com.
my website, her
Mm-hmm.
website, Free People. We have another retailer in the UAE, Dixie, that's carrying it. I think there'll be more retailers added come the fall. And we're actually working on some new prints and
Yeah.
a new collection now. So looking forward to that. But yeah, so far the response has been incredible, and just seeing my suits in a completely different way.
Yes.
I couldn't have imagined sort of seeing them like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then like I would have never been able to come up with this prints on my own. So really nice to, it really did feel like a true collaboration.
That's wonderful. Yes, they're beautiful. So everyone, go check them out. um, I just have I know I'm mindful of the time because I know you have somewhere to be. So just a couple more questions for you.
Of course.
Oh, actually, I just thought of one right now. When you saw your swimsuits in Vogue, how did
Mhm.
that feel for you?
Amazing. I mean, it just felt like, I'd been validated,
Mm,
especially, having a lot of years of sort of abuse almost,
mm,
where you just feel like you just never get the praise that you're looking for.
mm. And I think it was Amber Valletta that wore it, right?
Yeah, in Vogue
Yeah,
Italia,
so
amazing.
great.
Taught
Yeah,
by Peter Lindenberg, so amazing.
all the greats. Yeah, that's
Super
amazing.
lucky.
Yeah. Um, so my second to last question is, if you were going to say something to teenage Beth who felt bullied, um, and you were going to tell her two universal truths that you've learned in your life up till now, what would you tell her?
I mean, you're gonna make me cry. I mean, probably it's like so cliche, but probably just like don't give up. Um, and I don't know, I guess you're not defined by who people think you are.
Hmm, those are really powerful. Oh, I'm getting teary myself. Oh, I love you, Beth. And
Thanks for asking me. Yeah, it's fine.
of
There's
course.
no shortage of tears this year. I will say that much.
Oh, I know.
Happy and sad,
Hmm.
and I think it's weird because I just, I think people that really know me know how vulnerable I am as a person. Um, the people that don't think obviously that I, am probably a lot more hardened than I am. But certainly, this year has allowed me to just feel vulnerable when I needed to. Um,
Mhm.
because it's just been a hugely challenging time for a lot of people. And you just, sometimes the only way you can get through things is like really going through them. Um,
Mm.
so I've just allowed myself to just, feel it and go through it.
Right.
Even if it seems embarrassing as like a 40-year-old woman to be crying on a podcast, it's just like, I don't actually care.
Yeah.
Um, if
No.
that's what I need to do today, then that's just what I'm going to do.
Yes, this is a very safe space for that to happen too. Yeah. Always a safe space.
Go for it.
Yeah. My final question, and it's a question that I ask all of my guests, is with what you do, what do you want to leave behind in the world?
Um, Certainly, I would like to, have an impact. It would be nice to, be remembered for advocating for women and girls for sure, and for people, um, for human rights. Uh, Again, I just feel really strongly about, women's rights and having a tremendous amount of privilege living in Canada, having access to, healthcare, access to so much. I've been vaccinated. I've got my first dose of vaccine, which is incredible. So many people can't say that. So I just, feel it's really important to try and with that privilege, really try and, help others where you can. And yeah, I think, you know, from a fashion perspective, it'd be really nice to be remembered, for sort of changing, our tagline is changing the way women feel about swimwear. I would love to, hopefully have done that somehow. That, as Canadians, as women, as people just saw something that they didn't expect before. And that the brand has, is or was synonymous with really good quality and, Canadian design.
Mm. Thank you so much for your time, Beth. And
Thank you for having me.
of course, I wanted to have you on since the very start. And you are a wonderful spirit, and the world is really lucky to have you in
Oh, thank you. Thanks for making me cry on a
it.
afternoon.
It's what your body needed.
That's true. It's true.
Mhm.
Smudging my makeup before my next Zoom call. I appreciate that.
Well, you have 12 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I
Of
really
course.
appreciate taking the time and like wanting to speak to me.
Of course. Of course. I want more and more people to know who you are.
Amazing.
I'll talk to you really soon, Beth.
Thanks, guys.
Big
Thanks.
hugs.
Thanks, guys.
If you enjoyed that last conversation, be sure to check out more episodes of The Craft on Spotify and guest photo galleries on the website at wearethecraft.com. Thanks again for listening.